and welcome back to the Finding Hope podcast. My name is Kayla Bundy, and I'm so happy that you are here. In today's episode, we are going to talk about a feeling I personally know all too well. It's called loneliness. And little story time. So when I was 18, I was super young and naive and just dumb, let's be honest, okay? And I decided to move across the country. I'm from a very, very, very small town. I'm talking like farmlands around me, and the nearest Target was like a 30-minute drive. So very small town, like 2 stoplights, okay? I decided to move to LA, which was very different than what I was used to for 18 years of my life. And I knew absolutely nobody besides one person from high school, and we weren't super close. So I knew like nobody out there. And I was just so naive and excited until reality hit me in the face like a brick. I knew there was going to be changes, but not in the ways that I expected. And it was up until that point in my life that I had felt loneliness, like at moments and in times, but I never walked through a season or a long period of time with this weight and this emptiness and sadness that accompanied all of my days. So this was a really new feeling for me when it wasn't leaving in the way that I was used to it, just kind of coming and going. It stayed. And this was a big, big shock for me. And since then, I've definitely experienced loneliness in different times and seasons where it has lasted. And every time it's been in totally different ways. So hopefully the advice and the things that I found super helpful to me will also transfer over to be super helpful to you. And we're going to learn how to get through all of this and to overcome loneliness in only 4 ways. So bear with me because 4 is our magic number for this podcast, and we are going to leave feeling empowered, excited, motivated, driven, and so hopeful to overcome this uncomfortable feeling. So I've experienced loneliness in isolation, whether that was chosen or forced, as I'm sure many of us have after COVID. But I've also experienced loneliness when I've been the most social that I had been in my life, or at times where I'm surrounded by people the most. So in this podcast, I really want to break down just the 2 different ways that you can kind of feel loneliness and how to cope with each way. Because I think a lot of it can definitely be emotional loneliness versus, circumstantial, environmental loneliness. So I'm here to help give you hope by learning and understanding what loneliness is, how to feel it, how to accept it, and how to walk through it out and better than you were before. Also, when I was looking up loneliness and just kind of different definitions, because I was going to read some off, I was shocked at how depressing they all are and how much there is on loneliness and the causes, the effects, how it just leads down such a dark, scary path, and where these people are at that are feeling this lonely weight and seeing and reading how destructive loneliness can be. And so I'm honestly so thrilled you're here because I really hope and pray that this can speak to you if you are in that season of your life, and just know that there's so much hope to get through it, and you are not alone in any way. And loneliness is a completely normal feeling that doesn't have to overtake you or overtake your mind and your thoughts. It is just like any other feeling. It does come and go. And so I'm just here to help that feeling go maybe a little quicker than what it would on your own. So number 1, the first thing is loneliness is okay. It's okay to feel lonely. I was in such a season when I had moved where I felt like it was so wrong that I felt lonely and that I was mad at myself because I felt like I'm not fulfilling myself in the ways I thought I could, or I should be capable of doing this all on my own and I shouldn't have to rely on anybody. And yet here I am feeling so empty and hopeless and all of these things. And I just felt like honestly embarrassed that I was as lonely as I was. And it was really hard for me to admit because I am a very social person. And I just kind of thought that, oh, well, because I love meeting people and I'm not scared to talk to people, that I'm not going to be lonely and that I'll meet people and make friends no matter where I go. Which, yes, that can be true when you're social, but for me, friendships are so much more than just a person I know or can say hi to or a familiar face. There's such a deeper level of emotional connection that I was not feeling. And so I just want you to know nothing is wrong with you if you feel lonely. And loneliness is not a bad thing. Just like anything, I'm so thankful for the times that I've had really rough weeks, or I've been really sad, or a movie's made me cry, or, you know, I walk through a hard season. It doesn't mean those are bad things. It just means that, oh, it's alerting me to this is something maybe going on inside of me that I need to take a deeper look at. And if I'm feeling this emotion and I haven't really felt this before in my life, or this is a constant emotion I'm feeling, kind of getting a little more introspective and growing yourself in ways that maybe you didn't need to grow. And for me, that's what my first season of loneliness that I walked through was. It was a big eye-opener into just where I needed to grow and mature and learn in my life how to fulfill needs that weren't being met, that was resulting in me feeling lonely. Acknowledging the way you feel and identifying it is a really good thing. Don't try to push it away and pretend it's not there. I'm such a firm believer that you should and can feel unpleasant emotions while still having a positive outlook or mindset in the midst. This is definitely a theme you will see throughout most of my episodes in this podcast. So I want to take a second to kind of pause and dig a little bit deeper into what I mean by that. So essentially, I don't believe that where happiness is, sadness is completely gone, or wherever despair and depression is, that joy and hope and happiness are absent as well. I think both of these emotions, the good or the bad emotions, can live in your heart and mind at the same time and work together and not always against each other. Or where that one is, the other isn't completely gone. So hopefully this is making some sense to you, but essentially I think there can be very opposing emotions and feelings going on inside of us, and that doesn't mean we can have one without the other, or that we should. For me, I am honestly at my most content self when I am allowing myself to feel emotions and still know that I'm believing in hope, I'm excited, I still have a positive mindset on the other side or in the midst. And so again, what I mean is, personally, I just feel at my best when I'm allowing myself to maybe feel the uncomfortable, unpleasant emotions, acknowledging it, recognizing it, not pushing it away, just observing it, but at the core, always believing that there's something better on the other side, or good is coming, or there's good in it, or just essentially having my core so rooted in hope and an expectation that there is something good and bright inside of the current situation or a situation to come. So now this kind of brings me into number 2. Don't push loneliness away or try to escape the feeling in season. Like I talked about, loneliness can be felt and recognized, but not overtake your mind or your mindset. So for me, my mindset is always rooted in something good and positive and a better direction, okay? That's where my eyes are always looking. I can be rooted in something, but be feeling something else. So I encourage you to not let loneliness be what comes your root or take over your mind. And when I was reading things online, I think that's really where a lot of us can fall into a really dark and scary path or hole, is when it overtakes our mind, and that's our root, and that's what we feel 24/7. There isn't a light at the end of the tunnel at that point. That is our tunnel. So don't push it away, but don't let it overtake your mind and mindset. To work through the unpleasant feeling, I found it helpful to address it and really dive deep into where it's stemming from. So I briefly touched on this, but when I first moved, my loneliness was definitely the cause of not having friends or family in a physical close distance to me. And the social desires that I had or were used to having were not being met, which left me feeling very alone and isolated. So if you are in a season where you are not having friends, family, people around you that make you feel loved and understood, or there to, just go over for coffee and leave and not have every social interaction be a big deal, I know that stuff made me feel really lonely. I just want to encourage you and let you know that we are going to work through this, and I have so many things that I hope is really helpful to you, because I had been there. I was in that season of not having people around me for months. And I remember waking up with this weight of sadness that lingered throughout my days, praying for friends, crying as I told myself it would be okay. I was not in a very fulfilled place when it came to feeling lonely. And the best way I can describe that year of my life was such an emotional roller coaster that I had never ridden before. Meaning everything was a surprise, so many highs and lows, never knowing what was coming next. And if you're going to college, if you're at college, if you're moving to a new city, if you're living in a new place, this is a very real, normal thing. And I wish that I had known to expect this, or known that this might have been what would happen when I moved to a new place or was just in a new environment, because I really could have done a whole lot to ease the transition and still feel very surrounded by people and where my social needs were being met. Because I am an extrovert, it was a lot harder for me to just spend that time alone. Now, the other times that I have felt or experienced loneliness, it's been a plethora of root causes, but essentially they were all emotion-based. And there were times I felt very lonely due to not feeling like I had a safe person to talk to or be myself around. I would be around people all of the time or constantly. I would be talking to friends. I would be talking to family. And I just didn't feel secure emotionally within my relationships. And then at other times, I felt lonely because I felt like no one really knew me or understood my heart. And I was in a constant state of explaining myself, defending myself, maybe not saying anything because I didn't want to have to say where I was coming from or explain why that mattered to me, or not even explain, but just know that they didn't understand. And so both of these things, and there's been other causes for sure when I felt lonely, but my point is with both of these is that loneliness stems from a deeper problem going on inside of you, and that feeling you feel as a result of something so much bigger. So even if you've experienced loneliness one time, a million times, every day, it can come in different ways every time. Where this feeling is stemming from essentially can just be so many different things. And this was a big lesson I learned when I was experiencing loneliness, when I was surrounded by people. It was really foreign to me because loneliness didn't come in the same way that I had previously experienced it. So I encourage you, if you are wrestling with this, or the next time you find yourself lonely, to really just dive deep and reflect on why this emotion is lingering and where emotional or physical needs aren't being met. Because for me, that was just a huge eye-opener, and it gave me so much hope knowing I could get through it once I identified the reason I was feeling lonely. And a big one for me is, in those two examples I gave, not feeling known or not feeling like I had a safe place where I could be myself and somebody to talk to. I was blown away at how over time, it was not like I noticed it right away, but over time, I was stuck in such a sad state, and I was genuinely depressed from my loneliness. And it took me a while to realize that those were the reasons that caused me to get into that state. So I highly encourage you to just dive deep and reflect where your needs aren't being met. And then moving on to my third point, loneliness is temporary. So just like all things in life, reminding yourself every day, every hour, even every minute if you need to, this is a temporary feeling, and it will pass and be so foreign to you before you know it. It will not last forever. Don't let yourself be consumed by it, that it overtakes your mind and it's all that you can think about. I promise that the second your mind is consumed with this negative, unpleasant feeling, you will almost always be led down a deeper, darker path and hole, which is kind of what I talked about earlier. This is why I think believing there's hope, joy, positivity, purpose in this negative uncomfortableness you feel, or these moments, is so important to hold on to. Making sure you're really holding on to that positivity that is rooted in you, and knowing that there's going to be purpose in it, and you're walking through this season for a reason. Love how that little thing rhymed. Wasn't even trying to. But there's always a reason for a season. That is true. But just telling yourself this is temporary and you're going through this for a reason, and that is a good thing, and you're going to learn a lot, and it's not here to stay. You aren't going to be living every single day of your life feeling lonely. In the next few months, you're not going to be lonely. Who knows, in the next 2 days, you might not be feeling this loneliness. And then the last thing, the fourth piece of advice I want to leave with you, are ways to improve yourself in this season and walk out of loneliness quickly and seamlessly. As much as we want to recognize this feeling and be able to sit in it, we also don't want to stay in it. So I hope this helps the process be a little more seamless for you. So an example for me is when I moved and I knew absolutely nobody, I was very proactive in trying to get through this lonely period. I would go to a new coffee shop every day. I'd bring my Bible and I would sit and read. And within this, there's two things I want you to notice. Is one, I did something every single day that I loved and looked forward to. So coffee has always been a very true love of mine. And I didn't grow up in a place where there was a lot of different coffee shops. There was like maybe one 30 minutes away. So for me, it was super exciting to try new coffee shops and go to new places and just get myself out of the house. So I really encourage you to get yourself out of the house and go do something you know you are going to enjoy. And make it a big occasion. I would get dressed up for this, I'd put on makeup, I would do something that I knew I was going to get excited about, and it felt like a little celebration. And then the second point with it is I would bring my Bible and I would read, and I hated reading, okay? I've learned to love it now, but I hated reading. But I knew that if I did something that was good for my mind, and that could be the Bible, that could be a self-help book, that could be a fictional story, it could be any sort of thing, but something where you are improving your mind, that could be listening to podcasts, it made me feel good about myself, and it kind of distracted my mind from sitting in the reality of I'm here alone. I have no one. I'm sitting in this sadness. It really helped pull me away from those thoughts. So my advice to you in that is to find something you really enjoy. It could be walking, it could be reading, it could be working out, literally anything, and start including that activity into your daily life. Make it an occasion, something you look forward to. Pick out an outfit you feel amazing in. Do something special that you normally wouldn't do for that, and be excited for that activity every single day. This was such a good way to create self-care and feel productive in the process. It really took my mind on a whole journey that I didn't know was happening because I was distracted from the feeling that was very uncomfortable. So to recap, I want you to know that number one, it's okay to feel lonely. Number two, don't push loneliness away or try to escape this feeling. Number three, identify where loneliness is rooted and understand why. And number four, be proactive and do things every single day that are going to improve your overall self mentally, spiritually, physically, and get a good routine going that you're excited to start each and every day. So even if it's uncomfortable, I encourage you to let someone in to talk honestly about what you're feeling. And every single time I've done this, I've discovered why I'm in the lonely state, and I'm able to start brainstorming ways that I can improve in my own life and where those needs aren't being met or where there's these gaps that is causing this lonely feeling. I can identify and either seek help out in those ways or try to work on those things within myself and adjust my expectations for whatever season I'm in life. I would like to say too that when you have these conversations with people about how you're feeling and struggling with this loneliness, I would really encourage you to go into the conversation with the goal of you are going to leave better and in a different headspace than you started this conversation is. Breakthrough is on the other side of uncomfortability, so push yourself to be vulnerable, especially if it feels unnatural. And I can't stress this enough. I have had the best moments at the times where I do not want to say anything, and it takes every ounce of pride in me or independence in me to step aside and be honest with somebody I trust. And every single time that has happened, I really can see that that's where the breakthrough has started. And that's where the process begins of really pushing me and getting me through this hard season of my life. I really hope this podcast was helpful to you. Please check in on Facebook and let me know what you thought about this. I'm always beyond eager to hear what you guys are going through, if I was helpful to you, where you want me to talk more, what type of topics you want me to discuss, and just your feedback in general. It's so helpful to me because I want to be as helpful as I can to you. So I just hope that this provided you with so much hope, knowing that you are not alone and knowing that there's very easy, simple things you can do right now, today, to get yourself out of this lonely season and feeling a million times better. I love you, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.